Hi there, this is Amy Kynes from Ready, Aim, Teach. I hope this finds you doing really well and that your school year has started off just really positively. So how are you? And how are your students? I hope the answer to both of those is great, but I know that might not actually be the answer. You might be feeling overwhelmed. Your students might be feeling overwhelmed, and you might be experiencing the electronic overload. I know I've heard a lot of people already talking about the length of time that their students are facing the computer and just feeling very overwhelmed with it. When we were together last time and I sent our last email, we talked about some ways to build engagement. And one of the things we showed you was tabbed foldables. The idea of just having a kinesthetic way for students to engage in the content. So I showed you a 1-tab foldable and then a 2-tab foldable. Interactive graphic organizers, ways to get our kids kinesthetically involved. So today I wanted to show you another example of a foldable, a quick way to get our kids interactively engaged. This time it's using an envelope, because I'm guessing most students have some kind of an envelope at home because most people get a bill mailed to their house. So they have an envelope, and you can give your kids a heads up to save envelopes for a couple of weeks or for a week so that everybody's got an envelope. So here's a blank one. I'm going to show you what you can do with that envelope, and I'm going to show you an elementary example and then a secondary example. One thing you can do with it is they can develop an interactive book. So if I were teaching like a math concept at the elementary level, and we know there are multiple pathways, right, for solving math equations, but this is just one example. So what I've created here is a book. So if I wanted my students to really conceptualize the idea of 3/4, what I have the fraction on the outside. I can open it up, and then I want students to understand that 3/4 has multi-parts, right? So 3/4, I want them to understand that 3 is the numerator, 3 is 3 of the 4, and 3 is the number of parts that is being talked about. So the numerator, so they've described what it is. 4 is the partition into this many parts, so it's the denominator. So they've described what it is, and then they've drawn a picture. So as you see, it's a highly interactive note-taking device, and then they wrote a word problem about it, and then they have actually drawn to describe what the different parts mean. This is just from that envelopes, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to create it. But it's a really interactive way that you can get kids to conceptualize and understand it versus a worksheet. So that's an elementary example, and you can think about different ways that you would put your different content. The tabs you have here, this is a 2-tab, right? 2 pieces of content. You could divide that into however many pieces. I just cut that into 2. Now here's a secondary example. This is secondary English. So if we were studying the book Tuck Everlasting, you can put in whatever context, whatever historical event you were thinking about. If I were English, Tuck Everlasting, right? So we have the name of the book. And let's say I was teaching my students to cite evidence. I want them to be able to cite evidence and then interpret that evidence. So I have the name of the book, they turn it over, and this time I didn't cut it into 2 segments. I have the citation on one side. So this one is on page 208. It says, and they cite the quote, it says, "Don't be afraid of death, Winnie. Be afraid of an unlived life." So they have to quote, and then they open it up and they give their interpretation. So they've written their interpretation. I could also have them then create an illustration to go with it. And then they have an additional one. So on page 210, it says, "You don't have to live forever, you just have to live." They turn the page, they have their interpretation, and then they have their connections to their own life. You could decide what goes on these different pages, but again, you can see the power of that interactive, different kind of a foldable. So let me show you how to make this. You can do it with any kind of an envelope you have. Okay, the idea is you have an envelope. So you have the part that opens and shuts, right? We're going to leave that part alone. What you do, you teach your students to take the bottom part of the envelope. They're going to fold it up into where the fold is. So if you notice, I'm just folding it up into the fold. Okay, so I just folded it up into where it would fold over. Get a really nice crease. You open it back up, and when we are cutting, we're only going to cut to that folded part. Okay, So you can pause this video, you can come back after you've grabbed a scissors. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna shave off the sides. I'm gonna cut from the edge of it to that fold. So if you watch me here, I am going to just cut up. I'm just opening it up, so I've just cut off the edge. I turn it over and I'm cutting up the other edge. And I am cutting off the bottom of my envelope. Again, so if you go back, here's my envelope. I'm now just gonna open up the bottom of my envelope. I'm just shaving up the top of it. What I've done, I've just created that book that you saw in the Tuck Everlasting example, right? So I've now created something that kids can really manipulate from an old envelope. Now, if students have an envelope that has writing on it, they can put paper right on top of it. So don't worry about a used envelope. Use what they've got. If I wanted it to have multiple tabs on it, I just have them cut however many tabs or pieces of content. Now I've got it even more kinesthetic, right? So it's a great way to get our kids actively engaged. Use what they've got at home. Have them collect envelopes for a couple days. Teach them how to make this particular interactive graphic organizer. It's a great foldable just from an envelope. So again, we've got a great workshop. It's called Fold and Learn, using multiple modalities to boost critical thinking. We're going to be exploring all different kinds of foldables that you can do, like the 2-tab. There's all kinds of ones you can make from paper, but there's a ton of different foldables you can make from envelopes. So we're going to be exploring some of those in our workshop as well. Again, it's September 26th. It's just a one-day course. If people can't attend it actually that day, you can take it virtually, asynchronously as well. We've got the online modules that people can access also. It's one day. You can take it for 1 graduate credit through Trinity University. If you've got questions, reach out to us. We'd love to include you in this workshop. Clearly, we're passionate about foldables and the idea of engaging our students, because when I've got something like this, can you see how much more engaged our students would be with interacting with the content than just a worksheet or just a Google form? Because now I'm manipulating, I'm really thinking about that content at a deep level. And this is just from an envelope. So hope this is helpful. If you create one, we'd love to see a picture of it. So send that back to us. We would love to see what you come up with. On behalf of all of us at Ready Aim Teach, thank you so much for what you are doing for your students each and every day.